Hello and welcome to See What We See with Lauren and Martin. My name is Lauren Cashin. I'm the Executive Director of the Ontario Opticians Association, and I'm here with my co-host, Martin LeBeau, Deputy Executive Director of the Ontario Opticians Association.
Welcome to today's episode of See What We See with Lauren and Martin. Hi, Lauren. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine, Martin. How about you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Ready for a new podcast?
I certainly am, and I'm really waiting to have it because I really like the topic we're going to be speaking on today.
One thing that we've seen happening for the past few years is the landscape for the optical industry has been changing a lot.
It certainly has.
So we thought maybe it would be a good idea to bring the CEO and the chairman of one of the companies that's been very active over the past few years. The company we're talking about, and they are sponsoring this podcast as well at the same time, it is FYidoctors. And we'll have a quick conversation, an honest conversation with the CEO chairman, how his company started, what he's seeing for the future, and other things. Lauren, if you don't mind, maybe you can introduce our guest for today.
So I'd like to introduce our guest for today's podcast. It's Dr. Al Ulsifer. He's the CEO and chairman of FYidoctors. So welcome to the show, Al.
Thanks for having me, Martin and Lauren. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad you could join us today. So why don't we start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got rolling with FYI, because I know it's a really cool history you've got there. So maybe you can start filling us in with where it all started.
Well, sure. I'll try not to go on too long. I am an optometrist, graduated from Waterloo, class of 1990. I was very active in optometry association initiatives early in my career. Started off in a small practice in Airdrie, then expanded into Innisfil, and ended up about 4 years after graduating going to Grand Prairie, where met a couple guys, optometrists, that all three of us had grand ideas about building, the biggest clinic in Canada. So jumped on board there, practiced for 12 years at Northern Vision Centre, and had the idea, I guess, of forming something a little bit different. And it's funny what sparked it. I was at a Vision Expo, at a party put on by a lens company, and one of the senior employees came and whispered in my ear about this concept called freeform. And so I spent the rest of my time at the show going to research freeform, and came back out of that with an idea where, hey, a bunch of optometrists could get together, have our own laboratory, become one company. And that was really the first idea of it. Then it went to phoning some buddies, happened to know some friends that had large practices in Western Canada, took a weekend in Kelowna, pitched the idea of, hey, let's just merge our businesses together with no money, just equity, and thought they'd all laugh at me, but ultimately that became the foundation. So that was in 2008. We actually became live as an organization. We've grown a lot, although growth has been not our number one goal. For the first several years of the business, it's been grown by word of mouth. We do have that laboratory. We built it. We're in our second building. So our organization has grown to about 280 locations. We'll do close to $500 million in revenue this year, which always surprises people because they just don't think of FYI being all that big. And, we have a lab and distribution facility in Delta, British Columbia, that we're all pretty proud of, full automation, arguably the most automated ophthalmic manufacturing laboratory in North America. So this idea of a bunch of friends, has evolved into all these locations. And the locations are, we started off primarily optometry. And there's been some funny rumors over the years, as we've grown, that we didn't have any money. So we gave away, paper that was overvalued and worthless. So it's been an interesting journey from a competitive perspective, but, we chugged along over these last 13 years, operate under multiple banners. FYidoctors is primarily our optometry banner. Physique, because we didn't think we'd be in Quebec. FYidoctors is nonsense. In French, it doesn't make sense. So we had to come up with a name, for our Quebec business. But we've also got, some more optical forward that we'll call versus optometry practices. So it's more retail opticianry, boutique opticianry. So, locations like Le Cartier in Montreal, Grimard, in Quebec, the Factory Optical Group, more in the West, but Optics International, Factory Optical. So, and we've done a lot of independent optical deals as well, which is also a surprise to people. So those are the numbers. I think we have over 600 optometrists now in the organization, about 3,500 employees, and are growing now faster than we've ever grown. And some of that has to do with timing. We were really big on trying to build the right infrastructure. We didn't want to grow for the sake of just growing. We wanted people to have a good experience when they joined us. That was critically important to me. I mean, it's hard to merge your business into another business, even in the best of circumstances. So we really work hard at that. And one of the things I'm most proud of is just having people get together at an annual meeting, having fun and feeling like they made a good decision, because, a lot of deals don't end up with people feeling positive after the fact. So that's something we pride ourselves in. So yeah, so just moving along, we took in a partner last year. So I guess about a year and 3 months, called L. Catterton. And the L stands for Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy in the name. So they're partners with, that banner. But L. Catterton has brought brands to life, things like Peloton, Restoration Hardware, Sephora. You can look on their website, and they are the world's biggest consumer brand building, investment fund. So we're pretty proud to have them on board, and they're helping us grow and scale and kind of grow faster than ever. One last point, we're also just got in the medical aesthetics business. It's funny how it started. I thought I was meeting a dentist because I've met a lot of people that wanted to roll up healthcare, professions. And I always meet with anyone who asks about that, because, I enjoy any entrepreneur that wants to do that. It takes a lot of courage and guts and naivety as well. But I honestly thought I was meeting a dentist, and it was a medical doctor that had 3 medical aesthetics clinics in the Calgary area, and had a vision to, build kind of the FYI of medical aesthetics. So long story short, we ended up just doing it together. And so now we have 12 medical aesthetics clinics, and about 37, at various stages of diligence. So we're going into it in a pretty big way. So that's the FYI story. There's a lot of hardships and struggles and, things like that in between. But yeah, we're having fun growing. And for the first stage in the history of our business, it was always word of mouth. And we actually now are going out and talking to people about joining us, and door knocking and all those things that usually happen, we just never really did before, and are doing that now. So we want to grow bigger. We think we can help support practices, opticals. We have a mindset. Yep, we're a big company, but an independent mindset.
Oh, that's a lot in a short little period of time out there. Thanks. I'm sure there's a lot more to it that you can go in more details, and I'm sure there's a lot of good stories as well that came out of this throughout the process, right? It's always fun when you open up a business and you have all these plans and those dreams going forward. But you know what? I'm dying to know, why the name FYI, Doctors? What's the FYI stands for, really?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, when it comes to naming a business, I'm probably the worst person on the planet. So we actually did engage 2 marketing firms back then. And part of that core group at the beginning, one of the clinics that joined us was called FYidoctors. And, the thinking at that time was people don't know the difference between optometrists, ophthalmologists, but they knew what an eye doctor was. So this particular clinic said, hey, this has been so good for us. And so we went to the marketing people with, hey, we want to have a name but boy, it'd be really nice if we had eye doctors in it. And again, that was our business at the time. Yeah, so out of that, by the time you look at all the different names that are available, you look at trademark, and there wasn't a lot. And these two agencies came together with this name, which, people still scratch their head at it. I'll be honest, I do too as well. But it's, the concept of for your eyes, for your information, and linking it to, hey, we're eye doctors that are providing you care for your eyes. So that's where it came from.
Very interesting. I think that's cool that Disney started, they always said it all started with a mouse. And yours started with a way of manufacturing lenses,
Yep.
right? A processing way of modern day lens. I think that's kind of cool. So the eyeglass market and the eye examination market, just eye care, is just evolving like crazy over the last few years. So I'm just wondering, a player of your stature, where do you feel the market's going, the trends in the market? Are we going to continue to see mergers, acquisitions? Like what's coming? Where are we all going? Are all the independents going to kind of just slowly join up with firms like your own, or disappear?
It's a great question. I think probably one that we've been talking about for over 20 years. I know with FYI at the beginning, I did a lot of work in studying consolidation. And, I look back at those slides, and those slides 13, 14 years ago talked about Specsavers, and they talked about private equity, getting involved in eye care. And, I think some people thought I was crazy back then, but, we are in a world where it's very different. First thing I want to say is I'm pretty pumped about eye care and the opportunity, that we have in the space. So, I've seen a lot of doom and gloom conversations over the year, and yeah, absolutely. There's change. There's different players coming in with different value propositions, but we have a good industry. So back to your question, yes, consolidation will happen, certainly in Canada and North America. One of the recent transactions, we all know about is New Look was taken back private, led by, FFL, big private equity firm out of San Francisco. And, they were the previous majority owners of Eye Care Partners. So if you follow the news, tremendous growth, consolidation of ophthalmology and optometry clinics primarily. And although the full details of the deal were not disclosed, they sold to a very big entity for around $2.2 billion. So their mantra was do deals. And so New Look now has become, as they go through the take back private process, they'll be the majority owner of New Look, along with a pension fund and a couple other investors. And yes, the goal will be for them to continue to grow the business, because that's how you build value, by doing deals. Yes, we will continue to do deals, and more aggressively than ever before. And we are. Our pipeline of deals is bigger than ever. I like to think that consolidation doesn't have to be a bad thing. It really comes down to what are the values, what's important. So for us, our model, and again, I am kind of getting to different trends, but we're seeing, technology and eye care growing and getting more expensive. At the same time, remuneration, is not going up. So it's a bit of a dilemma, for a smaller player sometimes to be able to keep up with that level of technology. So it's something we have taken pride in as a big company. We have different synergies we can create within the organization and continue to invest in that technology.
So do you see price as a competitive factor now? Are people going to continue to race to the bottom? We've seen a lot of that over the years. Price, and then many years ago we saw that, and then all of a sudden it came back up. And is there a place for everybody still? Is whether you get involved with a company like your own, whether you stay independent, is there a future for the independent optician or optometrist?
Yes, I think so, but you have to decide who you are. In markets, what I will say is price matters, but it doesn't matter. So there's different businesses that come in and make price the issue, right? So I think if you follow Specsavers and their growth in the UK, it's just, and even more so in Australia and New Zealand, their story told to the public is you shouldn't have to pay this much, for eyewear. And they tell that story in a massive campaign, and it had a huge impact on that market. We do see disruptors and people, outside of optical coming in. If we look at kind of the disruptors, what I'll call the millennial kind of brands coming into the marketplace, the Warby Parkers, Bone Bailey Nelson, Kits, clearly it was that story that, hey, you're paying too much for eyeglasses from those expensive optometrists and independent opticians. That has been the story, and that story will get magnified. So does that mean that we all need to adapt and be like them? And what they're doing isn't a bad thing. They're just trying to, I think as independents, it's critically important not to try to copy and become something you're not. As an independent, you should have the best service, know people by their name, understand what they've purchased before, be personally engaged in their lives and the impact that you can have on them. And that's one thing I will say, that consistently that relationship is underestimated by any kind of disruptor, that's come into the, optical world. And there's been lots of them. But it's that relationship that has made some thrive, and others, if they didn't have that relationship and they were just another optical store, then that's a different story. Yes, there's significant vulnerability there in my mind.
Al, obviously, going back to a conversation that you're mentioning earlier, you've been acquiring. It started with optometry, and now you seem to do more and more independent opticians or optical boutiques and stuff like that. So obviously, you see the value of opticianry, and there's. I'm presuming you think it's a good investment. What do you see the future of opticianry working so well side by side with optometrists, which we know in the past has always been a couple of hiccups along the way, but we always collaborated nicely. We are playing in the same sandbox. But again, I don't know, from your perspective, how do you see opticianry going in the future?
Look, first of all, my wife is an optician. She trained in Barrie. So while I was an optometry student, so, even back then I understood, that, hey, working together, makes sense. The relationships are going to evolve, just like technology is evolving in optometry. We have to look at workforce. We have to look at distribution. Ophthalmology, are we really graduating enough of them? To the extent that they'll be able to do the kind of medical care that they've done historically, how much of that will fall on optometry? We look at new emerging things like the treatment of dry eye has evolved massively, just in a few short years, myopia control. So, we have the traditional buckets of an eye exam and purchase of eyeglasses and contact lenses. And, of course, now we have TheraVision, the first drug release contact lens in the world, and that's being tried out with us here in Canada. So I think, we have to not think of the different professions in silos. In the real world, like, we've always worked with opticians, and boy, I can't imagine not having opticians in our business. Northern Vision Center, we had over 100 staff in that. I can't tell you how many opticians, but they were an integral part to the business. And, consumers are ultimately going to be the ones that decide. Often in the past, we've looked at government regulations, and hey, I was very involved in all of that, barriers to entry. And I think the world, one thing the internet's done, and, even COVID arguably, is the concept of barriers to entry and regulations. Protecting a profession is going to be more and more challenged. And I think that's the reality, like it or not. There is going to be change and evolution. But, why the history that ophthalmologists and opticians and optometrists, the constant, fighting. Unfortunately, it was a reality in the United States, less so now. I'd love to see our groups having better conversations than we do, instead of kind of going to war in the offices of the bureaucrats, which, unfortunately, as long as I've been in the profession, that's been how how it's gone.
Sometimes those conversations, though, don't even apply inside of a location. I've never seen an optometrist and an optician fight or have anything really related to politics when you're working side by side. It tends to be usually more at a different level. But yeah.
I agree, Martin, because in all my years, and I've been with the association for 20 odd years, on the ground, opticians and optometrists seem to be getting along, and it seemed to be some of the old ideas were being perpetuated. And I think government didn't help a lot with, look at Ontario, I think we were the last province that allowed opticians and optometrists to actually work in the same premise. You know, we had to build, when we decided to bring an optometrist into a practice, we had to build a separate entrance. The patient had to leave the doctor's area, go outside and come back into the dispensary. So I think regulations, which Ontario I know the best, I think have perpetuated a lot of this, the politics. So I think that really opened things up a lot when we are allowed to work together, because I believe patients are served best when we work together. I know in our own practice, when I go in the exam room with the patient, with the optometrist, and we discuss the issue that we're trying to fix, the patient benefits. You know, collaborative practice, that's a term that really started coming around in the last few years. And I think people really do work well together. And as the old guards kind of retire in that, hopefully the new guard, like, well, even, you know, like what you're doing here, you're bringing opticians, optometrists together, and it's great. It's just another employment opportunity for opticians, or partnership opportunities through companies like yours.
You know, it's interesting. One of the things, one of the mantras I have is when we bring in a business, make sure you don't break it, do no harm. And, I've learned very clearly that we both have a lot of similarities in what we do, but an optometry practice is very different than, a really strong independent optician clinic. And it just, the optometry clinic more medical focused, and sometimes even a little embarrassed about the eyeglass portion being there, and that's a bit extreme maybe. Whereas independent opticians, I find, tend to be just super proud of selling and dispensing eyewear, and and it's just different. And to try to make one the other, in my opinion, doesn't generally work. I look at our factory optical business, and we call that internally like a retail forward, and we compete in the same markets where there's people that go to factory optical or optics international. Well, there's no way they're going to buy from their optometrists, and vice versa. There's people that go to FYidoctors that are no way going to buy from anyone other than that, or their independent practice or whatever. But I think it's embracing that there's different customers out there, different mindsets. And, I've seen some research just around the consumer mindset, who buys, why do they buy? And the first stuff I saw was from Luxottica many years ago. But, at that point in time, they broke it down into 4 types of buyers. And I think there's a 5th type now that I'll expand on. But, there was a person that was going to go to their doctor, they trust them, and they're going to buy from the doctor. And that was 35% of people, no matter what. Then there was the 30 to 35% of people that, hey, I'm going to go where I look the best, that I think has the best fashion, that, hey, it's all about how I look and how I feel about myself. And that's going to be the key driver. The 3rd was all about value and price, and bottom line is people wanted the best deal they could get. And that was maybe 15% at the time, probably higher than that now. And then that 4th group could be influenced to go into any one of those areas, would try any and all. And I think we've got a new bucket now, and that's the online, millennial type brand retailer, where, we've got this private label that's got some cachet, that's attached to the name, and that's your private label, value pricing, cool, hip millennial piece. And I think, those are the different customers that we face, and there's no one size fits all in terms of how we provide our products and services to the consumer. We have to kind of know who we are and excel in that particular area that we fit.
So I guess it's the old saying, you can't be everything to everybody, is so true today. Sometimes it takes some hard lessons to realize you can't be everything to everybody. You can't give the best service, the best products, the best quality at the lowest price. It just doesn't seem to work. So I think at the end of the day, it's like you say, find your niche. I think that's what you're saying, and take care of people. And I believe that, Martin and I, we deal in the better state-of-the-art lenses and that. And I found that once people taste the best, they can't go back. But as you're saying, there's a market for everybody. And I think even on online buyers, they buy their glasses, they see, but they're seeing and they're seeing. They're seeing 20/20 and they're seeing, can you just read that line in an eye chart, or do you really see well? Do you see, is your contrast good? Do you see at night? Do you see? So I think the success for people like ourselves and selling your freeform lenses and that is to get people to try to taste the best. And they won't be happy going online if they check it out. They'll come back. They'll realize that the independent or the things that are run very professionally with these state-of-the-art products. Like I say, we only have one set of eyes, so let's try to see the best we can.
Our industry is not dissimilar to every single industry out there, really. That's the restaurant business, the retail business. There's going to be higher end, lower end, price conscientious people and everything else. We just got to evolve and keep giving the best service or the best product or the best price, depending which market you're trying to target, right? We're at the point right now in our industry, there's a lot of baby boomers, and they are slowly starting to think about retiring. And COVID probably has a little bit as well to do with it. People are slowing down. They're starting to plan for the future. They're like maybe not working as many hours, they're getting comfortable. FYI companies has been acquiring and investing in companies. What's the process like, if you can talk to us about it today, for somebody, say, like me, that decides, maybe in 5 years from now, I could see taking my retirement, and I approach a company like FYI?
Well, sure. It's fairly simple. So we have a team. We do 1 to 2 deals a week is how often we're doing them. So we do have a team. It generally starts with, hey, I want to hear the story. So, sometimes it's me. We've got several people that'll get on. We used to go visit people. Now we do it on Zoom. So give a bit of a history. We're not really big on pushing and sales. It's really our mantra is to tell our story as best we can. And if you're interested, then we would sign an disclosure agreement and go into what we call evaluation process. So look at some basic things in the practice, come up with a valuation, and we're very formulaic, in the valuation. The last thing I want is, we have an annual meeting every year, and it's a super fun meeting, but we'll have, over 1,000 people, bands, 3 days of kind of talking about where the company's going and having a lot of fun. And I always worry, look at, I don't want all these people getting together and thinking everybody got a different deal. So it's something we're proud of our formula. And hey, we go through it. There's always tweaks and situations, but we basically ask for some information and then do an analysis and then do an offer presentation. So, again, through Zoom, better in person. If that comes to light again, we would do that. But boy, we've been doing a lot of Zoom offer presentations in the last year. There'll be questions. They'll say, okay, that makes sense. And often you go back, what about this? What about this? And so at that stage, we go to a non-binding term sheet if they like the offer. And hey, this looks great. So we just sign a non-binding term sheet, and then we go in and generate the documents for the transaction. So most people, we do have some flexibility around how much equity versus cash. It can be 100% cash, but if people say, hey, I'm a young practitioner, I like, the fact that Cadreton's invested in this company seems to be growing, you have an ability to have some equity in the business as well. So we explain all that. And when you take equity in the business, you get full disclosure into all of our financial statements, forecasts. So you become an owner of the business. But again, as I said, it's not required. It's whatever people, want. And so that's been positive as well. When people, it's kind of the WestJet approach. If you want to be a shareholder, you can be. And, with that, you get full disclosure and transparency of what's happening in the business.
Just want to ask you, so if an independent goes through the process, is like you said, one option is to sell outright or to part and part. Does that practitioner do they have to stay with the business for a certain length of time for a transfer of, because the patients recognize that independent optician or optometrist, do the deals usually have it where they have to stay and work for a year or two? Especially if mostly if you take all the cash, take your stuff and
once in a while we do that, but typically we go on trust. Okay, so we believe that if someone says, "Hey, I plan to work for 3 or 4 more years," that they're going to do that. So it's very rare that we would say you're locked in, because ultimately, if people aren't happy, like they don't want to be there. We don't want to have people feeling like they're forced. Obviously, in certain situations when you're buying someone else that's retiring right away, we might say retiring in a year, okay, like we want you to commit to us for a year while we go search for somebody else. And it's our, we have a whole recruitment team, so it's on us to find the replacement, but typically we don't lock people up. We also don't do, sometimes we see out there in business, we do a fair bit of work before we make an offer for the practice, because we want to make that offer and not have it changed. Sometimes what we see is in other businesses where very little information is given, an offer is made up front, and then the business goes, then you're asked to be in an exclusive period where the buyer goes through due diligence, but you're not allowed to talk to anyone else during that period. We don't do that. It's very rare that we do it unless it's a big deal, where we're spending a whole bunch of money on diligence. So it's very rare that we do that. So the last thing we want to do is force somebody to join us, or throw a price out there and then all of a sudden we find something and so we can't honor that price. So we do things a little bit differently, but it's again, we want friends at the end of this. We want people to be happy that they made the decision, and it's very much about culture with us. We do net promoter scores for the organization. We do employee engagement. We're 2 years in a row Canada's best managed company designate. So doing it well is super important to us.
What about let's say a young entrepreneur? We've talked about you guys purchasing basically a business, investing in a business. What about if I'm a young entrepreneur and I want to open my own place, but I want to do it FYI? Is that something you guys do as well?
Yeah, we've done some of that, not as much as, and it's funny, we begin to have the conversations, and it's funny, we have an annual, like once a year, people can buy shares in FYI, and once a year people can sell shares in FYI. It used to be ongoing, it was just way too much work, and it's a formulaic set price. So it's funny, we had I think it was 69 new optometrists buy shares, and we just went through this process. So when we talk them about you want to build your practice, we can support you and partner, or you can just join us when that might be in a new location where they can be lead optometrist, or again, an optical where there's multiple locations. We find that once they kind of hear the story of the business, and that they want to become shareholders in the big business versus focus on just one location. So it's often can I grow my business faster? This organization can as a whole, but also maybe my independent local practice or store can grow much faster because of the resources that we bring. So for us, I mean, we don't use the word head office, it's home office, and our team's job is to add value like that. I mean, if we're not adding value to whoever joins us, then we're not the right team to be leading it.
So Al, I got to ask you, what's next for FYI? What are we going to see coming down the pipe?
Lots more deals, US expansion very soon. Some surprising things probably for people in terms of the spaces that we're going into. So with medical aesthetics, we're primarily an eye care company, but now even in our press releases, we're changing to a multidisciplinary health company. So we're expanding our horizons. We built a strong infrastructure that again works well with other businesses. So it's more of the same, I guess, but faster. And we have a ton of capital behind us. So with our minority partner, and they are a minority that it's a bit unusual. There's over 70 now private equity, consolidations in North America happening. and they're virtually all majority. And so we're the strange entity where we have this powerhouse, consumer brand building private equity fund, but they're in a minority position. So what they brought to us in skill set and access to capital, we're just going to go as fast as we can and maintain the quality and culture as well as we can. It's strange. Sometimes you think, as companies grow, they become less personal and all of that. So our engagement platform that we do every year, we had the biggest jump in a positive way we've ever had in the history of the organization over this last year. So it's stuff like that that makes me proud that, hey, we do have that independent mindset. We do have that team mindset, even though we've gotten pretty darn big over the years.
Well, the future looks bright for FYI the way you're telling us. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for doing this with us today. And maybe next time you can go into a little bit more details of what's coming up or the new deals that you just made and everything else. I'm sure our listeners would love to hear about it. But again, thank you so much for being with us today. It was a great conversation, and hopefully get to do this soon again.
Well, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Enjoyed the conversation. And yeah, I do these interviews and typically I try not to do a commercial for our organization, but do appreciate, we are open for business. We do want to grow. And, we've really enjoyed, both the optician-led practices, optometry, the bigger chains. It's been a learning experience, but also a whole bunch of fun. And as I said, I think we have a really great industry. We have to be more strategic about how we do things because, there's new players coming in and new messaging out there, but I can't think of a better business to be in.
Well, Martin, that was certainly informative. I really got a lot out of it because I've always had a lot of questions about these types of businesses.
Yeah, that was great from Al to give us all this information. I think a lot of people, just like yourself, had a lot of question, and he was able to open up, pick your curiosity a little bit. He was honest about it, which was great. I'm sure people will have more questions. We welcome them to visit the FYI website or even contact them directly. We'll have the information at the bottom here of our podcast.
Yeah. So if anyone's interested, check it out on our website where we will have the contact information for FYI. So I guess that brings to a close another episode. So Martin, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. It's great working with you again today. I guess I'll see you very soon for our next podcast.
Yeah, that was great, Lauren. Thank you very much. It was a great conversation again. This episode of See What We See with Lauren and Martin was brought to you by FYidoctors. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to See What We See with Lauren and Martin. Be sure to follow us across our social media pages so you never miss an update or an episode. You can find us on Twitter at OOA_frontline. On Facebook and LinkedIn, we are Ontario Opticians Association. Follow us on Instagram at Ontario Opticians Association. That's all one word. We look forward to seeing you again on See What We See with Lauren and Martin. Take care and stay safe.